Good evening, televiewers. Welcome to today's edition of Prime R on My Media Prime TV, an edition that is going to be looking at the summits that have been going on for decades now between Africa and respective nations of the world. For example, the France-Africa Summit, Africa-Russia Summit, Africa-USA Summit, Africa China Summit. We're going to be looking at the essence of a continent engaging nations across the globe. Should we still be talking about Africa as a continent engaging nations instead of nations in Africa engaging other nations across the world? What is the essence of all these summits where Africa is engaging particular nations? What have we gained from all these summits, and what are the implications? What does it tell of our continents in 2023? Are we actually independent? Are we making gains? Are we showing to the world that we are truly independent? We are going to be looking at this with Apostle Ambe Valentine, who is our permanent consultant, an expert also in African affairs as well as our global affairs. He's going to be looking at this phenomenon that is raising doubts and thoughts amongst the population of the world, asking why a continent has to gather around particular heads of states to discuss about their future. How beneficial has this been to Africa? Good evening, Apostle Ambe Valentine, and we'll be glad to have you once again on Prime R.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, Cameroonians. Good evening, Africans, and welcome to this wonderful edition of Prime Hour. Today we are discussing something very sensitive that has been a worry in the minds of so many Africans, and I've received calls from far and near asking the same question: why should a continent answer the call of a nation?
Yes, we have Africa actually, as we speak, that is answering to the call of France.
Yes.
They're in France, and we are cheering them up when they make very beautiful speeches. But we're going to be looking at not only what is happening in France, we're going to with respect to what has been happening in Russia, in China, in the United States of America. But what does it tell of the African continent when heads of state sit either in America, in Europe, or in Asia and call African nations around to discuss about, I don't know what they're discussing?
Mr. Leo, this has been a question that many Africans have asked, and I've received calls from Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, for those who have gone through my videos, asking why should a single nation in Europe summon a continent, a single nation in Asia or America summon a continent like Africa. 54 head of state and head of governments will fly in private jets, being packed in buses like school children, to go and submit to the call of a single president over a nation. And I think this thing is tied to one thing: is complex. Africans have a complex. They believe that they have nothing to offer, and because of that, they believe something is somewhere. Because when you're going to go to those summits, Mr. Liu, you look at their worries, it's very challenging, like what recently happened in France. But let me go and give a background story of the difference between Africa and these countries. Africa has a surface area of 11.7 million square miles, and France's population has a square mile of 549.87 million square kilometers. Look at the gap. The surface area of Africa can take in America, Japan, Mexico, China, most of European countries. In other words, if you gather all those countries, you feed them in Africa, each country will have a sufficient space to stay and accommodate their population and all their industries put together. I'm talking about the square miles. Good population. Africa has a population by 2022 of 1.4 billion people. Now, coming to natural resources, France, in terms of square kilometers, in terms of population, in terms of natural resources, has nothing to compare with Africa. So I'm wondering what they are going there to get from France. Because one of the worries I heard Ramaphosa, South Africa president, saying that the dinner they had in the evening, the news person goes to say they promised giving them $100 billion the last time, and it was just a wish. How can a continent that has a square mile of 11.7 million, population of 1.4 billion people, and with resources from all angles, the best diamonds are from Botswana, the best gold is from Mali, the best timber is from Cameroon, Name them. Then with all these resources put together, with the kind of intellectual minds we have in this Africa, we now assemble all these great minds, resources, square miles, and then arable land for agriculture. We go to Sukum, to France, that does not have a square kilometer in terms of land surface that compete with us, a population that does not match our own, and equally does not have resources that are compared to us. When you put all these things together, it gives a lot of concern. And we begin to ask, is it France that we give the money that will satisfy 54 states in Africa? What is $100 billion compared to what Africa can produce? Are we going there to get technology? Are we going there to get intelligence? Are we going there to learn how to produce ammunitions? Or we are going there and begin to balance the equation to find out what Africans will gather in their numbers? William Samuel Ruto, recently elected president of Kenya, said they are so humiliated that when they go, sometimes they are being packed into buses like school children. How do you expect a head of state that runs with convoys in Cameroon that are sometimes more expensive than that of the Prime Minister of Holland? The convoy of President Pobia is better than the Prime Minister of Holland. The convoy of President Pobia is better than the convoy of most European presidents. Yet we assemble those 54, 55 presidents to go and sit in France. This thing has to do with complex.
It has to do with
it's complex.
Yes, but some persons are tracing it to a new form of colonialism, where in the past time, those nations will come to Africa to colonize us, but we are rushing to them that, guys, we are available for colonialism in disguise, because these guys came here.
Of course.
We either go to America, we go to Russia, we go to France, we go to China. How do we explain? How do these presidents explain to the common African that we are going there to seek your interest?
Now, this is where the challenge is. We are trying to accept the fact that colonialism was abolished. It has not been abolished. It has been improvised. And I'm going to explain this. Okay. In the beginning, they came to Africa, colonized our territories, and even harvested some of us as slaves and took over to go and work and build their plantation and build their infrastructure. Once that was done, they claimed to have abolished slave trade, and then they did what they call freedom of slaves. And when the slaves were freed, it is obviously said that Africans got their freedom. Mr. Liu, the modern day slavery is no longer arresting people and putting them in boats to carry them abroad. There's a scripture in the Bible that says in the book of Proverbs 22 verse 7, it says the rich rule over the poor. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Now, if you look at it critically, the modern day slavery is not that barbaric and a wicked approach to handling men. This time around is a mental approach to slavery, where you are trapped with debts that you cannot speak against your creditor. So most African countries are indebted to these people. And if you are a debtor, you have no choice. You are bound to succumb. There is no African country that is not indebted to the IMF or to the World Bank. And I told you the last time here that the IMF came up in 1944 after the Great Depression hit Europe and America from 1929 to 1939. And in 1937, 1938, there was a recession. So they calculated that we don't want to suffer this Great Depression anymore. They came up with the idea of the IMF. The IMF now came as a means of borrowing income to many countries to sustain in terms of crisis. But you see, look at it critically. Once there is a challenge in Europe and America, that thing is shifted to fall upon the shoulders of Africans. That is the reason why you will see the amount of debt that Africans owe the IMF is heavier than any European country. Tell me what Europe is producing. Tell me what they have that we do not have, that we cannot share equal debt at the International Monetary Fund. This is what the challenge is. So the modern day slavery is that they have trapped most of these presidents to be debtors. And once you are a debtor, you have no choice. So when you are being summoned by a creditor, you have no say, Mr. Liu. You and I are here. Once you see somebody you are owing, the first thing you do, you hide. Yes, you hide. You hide. Strong. He helps you. And even as a creditor, once you see a creditor, you are standing on the advantage position. So because you are positioned on the advantage side, that's the reason why every time they clap their hands, you realize everybody is abroad. There's a new trend of leaders in Africa who are now going to sit in front of the and tell them red is red, blue is blue, yellow is yellow. I was impressed by Cedrick and Fosa's presentation, and by William Samuel Ruto presentation, until he called Macron Emmanuel. That gives you an impression that the black man begins to understand his position in front of the white man.
Yep. Yeah, you talked about 100 billion.
Yes, $100 billion.
Yes. Do we need that from France or any nation?
For what? Mr. Liu, $100 billion for what? That's the question we should be asking here. Because we have been collecting that
to a continent.
To a continent, $100 billion from a country to 54 nations. Now, I think if we want to calculate the growth of a country, we should be calculating its gross national productivity. Now, the growth of this Africa in terms of productivity is too high. Even if we are at the primary stage of production, our primary produce are strong enough to subjugate every other producer in the world market. Now, how do you tell me that somebody who is a greater producer is going to receive aid from someone that has no natural resources? Step into France, you will not see anything there in terms of gold, diamond, silver. What they produce in France is grape that produces wine. That's where you get it. The highest system of agriculture in France is viticulture. And that's what they use grape to produce wine. Now, apart from viticulture, what other system of agriculture is practiced in France? Go to Holland, it's market gardening, where they reclaim land to farm tomatoes. Tomatoes does not have the value of cocoa in the world market. Timber coffee, the best Robusta coffee comes from Ethiopia. The best diamonds come from Botswana. Now you go around Africa, you cannot explain why we should go to borrow or go and seek for $100 billion.
Can the DRC not provide $100 billion to Africa?
The DRC is the richest, I repeat, the richest nation in the world, not in Africa. Now, I was speaking to a white man who came as an explorer in Limbe. They are in charge of constructing refineries in Africa. He told me, he said, they went to Lubango in Angola. The oil deposit in Lubango in Angola can feed America for the next 100 years. I'm not talking about DRC. DRC has beneath the earth of DRC. The resources that are beneath the earth of DRC can feed Africa alone. There is a dam in DRC that can sustain Africa for electricity throughout Africa, but I refuse to invest in that dam. About 600 million Africans don't have access to electricity. Yet, we have one of the biggest lakes. Go down to Victoria, the Great Lakes are there. You have all the dams where water can produce highest electricity in Africa. Yet, Africa does not have access. Then Africa gathers 55 nations to go and take $100 billion. I'm asking if Afrexim, Africa Import and Export Bank, cannot raise that money. I'm asking if African Development Bank cannot raise that money. The challenge I used to have is that I used to think that those banks belong to Africans, but it doesn't. 80% of the shareholders of African Development Bank is France, Germany, Britain, and America. Now, an African is put at the head to convince Africa that these are own property, but the owners from beneath are the Europeans. Go to AU. AU is giving us an impression that we are Africa, it's an African thing. They fall back, most of the people run the affairs of AU. You cannot have a continental organization that is sponsored by Europeans. Europeans have a permanent seat in AU. Israel is looking for an observatory seat in the AU. Mr. Liu, how do you explain that the EU has a seat in AU? Where have you ever seen an African country having a seat in EU, European Parliament, or United Nations Security Council? Nothing of that sort. That tells you that they are not just here, they monitor almost everything that circulates within the continent. That is the reason why we have a purported display of leadership in Africa who seem to be African, but they are not Africans. That's what the challenge is.
They're not Africans. But when they went to China, you followed what happened in China, you followed what happened in Russia. What, according to you, is the net benefit we've had from this summit, China and Russia?
Debt, Mr. Liu. The net benefit we got for that is debt. I was listening to the Minister of Transport, Amechi, former Minister of Buhari's government. He said the reason why they like Chinese loans. A Minister of Transport is saying that the reason why they like Chinese loans is because Chinese loans are of low rate. But I have to explain this here because most Africans are dribbled and trapped by this manipulation. China will give you loan for 7%. IMF will give you loan for 24%. By 1993, the loan rate between IMF and Nigeria was 24%. while China will give you loan for 7%. The good thing is this: the lenders like Japan, America, France, Britain, who control IMF, once they realize that a nation is sinking, automatically they can cancel debt. But China will give you a loan at 10% and seize your property if you cannot pay the debt. I'd rather borrow a man that will forgive me if I have no money than to borrow a man that will kill me. So the Chinese loan look attractive and appetizing because the rates of interest is small. But the danger is that the day you cannot pay that rent, they will seize the port of Djibouti. They will seize the airport of this country. They will seize the land of this country. Then you see the IMF, when they realize that you cannot pay the loan, they do what called debt cancellation. Now, most of the Chinese are not publicly known. They are debt behind. You see, members of the IMF come together to hand the IMF loan with the accounts open. So they will just but that's not what China does. So China seized our loan is not supposed to be public. Secondly, Chinese individuals who have banks in China are the ones who sometimes borrow money to African countries under the IMF. That's why China had an agenda from the year 2020 to raise 450,000 million. So you know that basically it's so dangerous to borrow from somebody like this that was a man who was owing the master forgave him. And when he went and met another person who was owing him, he strangulated the person. The person had to pay the money. China will not forgive the debt. He will give you loans at a very low rate, yet he will not forgive you if you cannot pay the rent. That's the danger. So I will prefer a loan from IMF. None of them is better than to take a loan from China. President of Zambia, so much loan from China, and so much properties were constructed in roads were under construction. There was a boom in the Zambian economy. A time came where they could not do those loans. Now, because of that, we start short-circuiting the flow of civil servant salary and other investment in other areas, even on health provisions in order to pay Chinese loan. What kind of loan will leave a civil servant and go home without even bread to feed his family? What kind of loan of Allah put in roads? So when they take a temporary road that will glorify us and that one I come captive. That is why I can't over the loan in Zambia. You go to Mongolia, it's the same thing. You go to Pakistan, it's the same thing. Somebody said in Islamabad that we are unable to even eat bread because our nation's textile industries are no longer functioning anymore because much of the national revenue is being gathered to pay debts. What kind of debt that will leave even the common man not to have food to eat? Is that not Scotch-Ed policy of Samori Toure?
Okay, we don't know, but let's take the case of China. You say what when we get to China, what we come back with is loans and
60 billion. That's what African countries gather in the Afro-China summit, and
yeah, but
60 billion.
$60 billion dollars. What would that actually do for Africa?
The problem is this: even if the money is doing nothing, the people who collected the money, what are they doing with it? The problem is this: borrowing is not a problem. What you borrow to do is the challenge. I read the scripture where God authorized a widow to borrow empty containers. And after borrowing the containers, she invested in it and she never borrowed again. The danger is that most of the loans collected goes into the pocket of individuals because you don't see a commensurate growth in infrastructure. You don't see a growth in the social, economic, and different aspects of the country. Yet you hear of loans being taken. How can 54 African head of states go to France and say that last time the promise given the $100 billion? I'm asking if Africa is worth $100 billion because I know of individuals in this continent that can put that money in one sitting. I know of presidents in this continent that will not make their finances known publicly that can put that money in one sitting. So that is it.
Okay. Now, take the case when presidents leave Africa, the continent of Africa to gather around Russia.
Yes.
What can a continent like Africa benefit from a nation like Russia?
Mr. Liu, Russia is a country that the gap between the have and the have-not is too wide. You can have the richest men in Russia as well as get the poorest people in Russia. Russia is not a balanced economy. Wealth is not evenly distributed. You can step at one angle in Moscow and think that wealth in the world is in Russia. You go down to Sochi and you think poverty exists in Russia. The last time they had the Afro-Russia summit in Sochi in 2018, what they went there to discuss was the kind of arms they will buy. Museveni stood in that meeting and said, we need more arms. I was asking if they are buying arms to fight the European powers that exploit their resources around the Great Lakes in East Africa, or they are buying more arms to crack down Bobby Wine, who is contending for presidential position. Who do they buy these arms to fight against? Because you can't buy arms from Russia to fight against Russia. They are not buying these arms as if one day they will shake a war against France and they use these arms to fight against France. These arms are being bought to confront their own people in order to hold tight to the seat of power that they have held for so many years. And that's why they buy arms. So Russia is a trader of arms in Africa, and that's one of their priorities in Africa here. To most Africans, Russians are coming to liberate them and to deliver them from the shackles of the tight-fisted dictators who have held onto power for many years. No, Russia is a businessman. If a dictator will buy arms very well, that will keep him stay in power for 200 years, they will sell. What they have here is business. So they don't choose who is their customer. And most of the persons they are fighting against are the poor who do not even have the money to buy the Russian arms. So who is Russia coming to sell in Africa? It's coming to sell to dictators who want to buy the power and stay in power, to buy the arms and stay in power. So let us not be deceived that Russia's coming to Africa is going to liberate Africans and give them some dimension of freedom and a kind of autonomy. That is absolutely impossible. What they are doing in Africa is that if an opposition leader has the money to buy their arms, they will support him. If a president in question who has been there for 30 years has money to pay for the arms, a businessman does not select which customer to sell to. The highest bidder is the one that attracts the attention.
Yeah, but are these presidents not aware of these things that you are saying, Apostle?
They are very aware, Mr.
So how do they gather around Russia? They gather around China. I'm sure China is going to be inviting in the years.
In a few years to come.
Yes, but how do they make us to believe that they are going there not to buy arms or to? Is it to also tell America that we also have an ally this way?
Of course. The truth is, Ruto said once, and I quote, he said, sometimes when they summon us, you don't go, you are in trouble. For the fear of losing your position, you will be left with no choice than to obey. I have seen cases where presidents are very old to move around their country. But when summoned by these guys abroad, they will fly. They will take flight and go and make sure that they obey the demands of their master. No matter how tired, weary, and frustrated they are, they go there because why? First and foremost, they are not just securing their relationship with those people, they are equally securing.
They are still in power.
They are still in power. So if you don't go there as a schoolboy, answer to the call of your headmaster, your position is at stake. The next coup d'etat may jeopardize your life. That's it. So you realize that most of them go there out of fear. And that's the reason when they go there, they say the normal things. But a few African leaders who have not been coaxed and manipulated by these guys now have begun to go up there to see how they can present the demands and the worries of the Africans. Like what happened in France recently, it gave me hope and confidence that there is a breed of African leaders rising in this continent that will table what Africa needs. For instance, Ramaphosa said during the COVID-19, we were treated with a lot of disfavor and disdain. And he pointed it clear and he said, when it was time for them to get the vaccine, most of the nations of the Northern Hemisphere bought all the vaccines. And that created resentment in them. And secondly, he said, when they went to the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, to demand for them to produce their own vaccine, they faced a lot of resistance. What is the essence of jeopardizing human life at the betterment of their pharmaceutical companies? That's an African leader. For a very long time, we have not heard voices like that. It was in those days we heard men like Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Sekou Touré, Modibo Keita, who stood in Addis Ababa and made speeches that called the Africans to their reality. We have not had such leaders for a very long time since Muammar Gaddafi departed the surface of this earth. Now we're beginning to see a new breed of leaders coming. My fear is this: these new people are coming. They should not be traitors among them, because if we had men like Ruto, Ramaphosa, and the rest, Haikande Echelema, behind Gaddafi, there would have been a formidable force to stand against it from eliminating him. But you see, I don't want this one-man battle, this one-man championship. It's dangerous and it's delicate.
One-man battle. Do African nations, when they go out there, do they go as a continent, or they go as they see themselves as a nation?
It's individuals. Everybody goes to answer the call of his master. And all of those guys don't have the same master. The countries that were colonized by Portugal in Africa, they go to answer the call of the Portuguese. Those who were colonized by France, even if they say it's a France-Africa summit or European summit or American summit, they are going there to answer. The France summit you call, Germany was there. It is called France-Africa summit, but Germany was there. France was there, Britain was there, and every country living in the continent Africa is going to answer yes sir first to their master that colonized them. And then now, before now, the general discussions on the place, the Africans, so that is that if Africa, they are not Muslim. If not, we would have selected 7 individuals that represent 50 nations. Why should 54 presidents represent Africa? How many Russian sometimes those 54 African they have decided Africa in all international conference. That is exactly what Magufuli did. If you attend all these so-called United Nations Assembly, what did he do? What he did was to send the ambassador of Tanzania to represent him in America over any case that concerns Tanzania. Why should we send ambassadors to go and represent the nations that our presidents are being tossed to and fro, left and right? I think the ambassadors of all countries represented in China should represent Africa in the Afro-China Summit. And if there is a summit in France, I think all the ambassadors representing African countries in France should represent Africa there. Not telling President Pobia to get up, Ruto to get up, Ramaphosa to get up, Haikande Echelema to get up, LCCs to get up, and then all of them fly with 54 different aircraft to go and land. The cost of transporting all those delegations to go there, the hotel reservations, the feeding, is one that can be able to fit more people. And the theme of Africa's AU summit this 2023 is accelerating the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. How can we accelerate when 54 head of states come with different 54 aircraft and delegations to stay in hotel? If they calculate the cost of what left Africa to attend that summit, it can fit at least 2,000 children dying of hunger in Burundi.
Okay, so we are going there as to answer the call.
Yes, first of all, for our masters, before the so-called summit that is captioned publicly.
Yeah, but when we go, where do we place our so much talked about sovereignty and independence?
So you are talking about sovereignty.
Sovereignty and independence.
Sovereignty and independence is a word that was used to deceive the common in Africa. The word sovereignty and independence is never. As a matter of fact, the word independence should be removed from the dictionary, because in actual sense, nobody is independent.
Okay.
We are interdependent. America depends on Cameroon. France depends on Cameroon. France, so how independent is America? How independent is France? It's the same thing. How independent is Cameroon? Cameroon depends on America for so many things, and Cameroon depends on France for so many things. So we are interdependent. And because we are interdependent, that is what we have to square shoulders as equals, because nobody is feeding the other. We have not sat in this Cameroon and able to eat, then France say, okay, we are feeding all Cameroonians today. No. And France has not sat there and survived without having raw materials from Cameroon or Africa. So that means the word independence or sovereignty does not exist even, because that sovereignty is just a camouflage. In reality, our leaders are not independent and they are not sovereign. Because if you are sovereign, I think you'll be able to have your own currency. Sovereignty means full right. Sovereignty means ownership. Sovereignty means totally in control. You can't be in control, then you are grumbling. Cameroonians, Central Africans, Equatorial Guineans, Congo, Brazzaville, they are not sovereign, because if they are sovereign, they have been talking against the CFA, yet they have not been given the opportunity to create their own currency. How sovereign are you when you cannot create your own currency? How sovereign are you when you can't create your own currency? How sovereign are you when certain rules of engagement you cannot take without consulting an authority? How sovereign are you when you are under a particular banner they call Francophonie? There is no Cameroonphonie, neither is it Gabonphonie, or name them, Central African Phonie or Chadian Phonie, or have Francophonie. Why should all nations go under a banner? That's not sovereignty. That's not sovereignty. What makes WUM unique in the Northwest is because WUM has a culture nobody interrupts. WUM has an ancestral stool nobody interrupts. WUM has a constitution and a kind of operation that nobody interrupts. That's what makes WUM WUM. That uniqueness. Not that WUM is attached to Momo and then you say WUM is WUM. WUM is not WUM. So why should Cameroon be called La Francophonie? Then the Cameroon is called Commonwealth. That's not sovereignty. It isn't.
It isn't. How do we go as a continent to an independent country to another independent country?
That you come back to the same question again and asking me if actually we are really independent. Mm-hmm. Because if we were really independent, I'm sure if a summit is held in France this year, next year it should be held in Cameroon. I think if we are friends, we visit each other.
Yeah, but
if I come to you always, I'm coming to pay homage, it's not visit. They should be able to understand what is visit and pay homage. Because visitation within friends is an exchange. When have Europe gathered to come to Cameroon for Africa-European Summit? But every year we fly there. It tells us we are going to pay homage. Now when a king stays in the palace, everybody goes to visit the palace. The king does not come to people's houses. That's a sign of subjectiveness. So it means you are subject to the king. And then if at all the king will come one day to your place, it's going to be news. So it is not a friend relationship. It is a master-servant relationship. And if there is a master-servant, it means there is no sovereignty. Because we should not be going to France every year without them flying back this way. Because friends visit each other, but servants pay homage to masters.
Yeah, but if France were to come or Russia were to come, are they coming as a Russian-African summit, or they should come to see a nation like South Africa, Nigeria? Is Nigeria not big enough to host other African nations? Is South Africa not big enough to host other African nations? Do we really need to do what we're doing?
It's a lot. Like I gave you the square kilometers population in terms of natural resources, Africa beats them. Now let's accept the fact that Africa is a continent, because America in that capacity is a continent. Yeah. So let's deal with Africa as a continent. Apart from colonial boundaries that have split all of us here and there, Nigeria is not different from Cameroon, Cameroon from Gabon, Gabon is different from Central African Republic. We are all Africans. Now put it in a nutshell, let's consider that Africa is a nation as well as a continent, just like North America. Let's accept that they are coming to Africa. That's accepted, because they have given us the impression that Africa is more of a nation than a continent. For them to summon an entire continent, it means they are not seen it as a nation. Because if they were dealing with Africa, the issue is that they know the reality of African unity, but they cannot accept it. Because if truly they want to deal with Africa as nations, then they should be calling Cameroon France Summit, Central African France Summit, Gabon France Summit. They should not be calling Frank Africa. Africa, Russia, African China. So why is it African China? It's because they know very well that Africa is a nation, but they will not accept that these different clans and tribes and communities be welded together to form that single nation. So let's accept that Africa is a nation. Africa welcomes France here.
Desmond, so many persons are writing to complain about the volume. I don't know what is wrong with that. Can you check the volume? Yes, possible.
So that's what I'm trying to explain. So if they have accepted the fact that Africa is a continent as well as a nation, then let us do, because if Africa is not a nation, they'll not be calling France Africa. So they know that Africa is a nation. Now, let's do Russia-Africa relationship. They are coming here. We are going on a win-win deal. Not that 54 African countries will go and be asking that they promise them $100 billion. I think those leaders spoke very well, except this statement that got me pissed off when I followed the recent France-African summit. That Africa as a continent, 54 countries with all the resources are asking for $100 billion from a single country conference. In what capacity?
Okay, Apostle, let me take some messages. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Just to react on the topic of today, we Africans don't value ourselves. We keep on hoping only from the Western world. If we recognize where we came from, we will know where we are going. Aaron is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and extend my greetings to Apostle Ambe. Your program are always super. I am watching from the Boncha. Thanks for educating us. More great. Good evening, Mr. Liu. After the Second World War, countries like China, Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Japan benefited from the aid, and after 20 years, these countries are aid-free. But African countries, after 60 years, are still begging and negotiating for aid through these summits. This current leadership of Africa, with the exception of Kenya and South Africa, is a failure. In a nutshell, these summits are worthless and not productive to the ordinary Africans. Mr. Rudolph, watching from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm watching from Bangem. Thank you for this program. The Western world are just seeing us as mad people. What they do is they print empty papers in a form of loan called dollars, give to us, and if we don't pay back, they come and start taking away our natural resources. What values do empty papers have as compared to our natural resources? They can print as many papers as they want, but our natural resources, once used, can't come back. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is a critical topic. How can you explain the fact that 30% of military generals in an African country are Chinese? When Jacob is writing from Kumbo. Dear Mr. Liu, who pays their tickets and other expenditures to such meetings, and what do they bring in return? Nkwan Jacob from Kumbo. Greetings, Mr. Kuma. I enjoy today's topic. France and all these European countries was and is the worst thing that ever happened to Africa. Indeed, most African presidents are modern mental slaves who have been successfully manipulated. We pray for a leadership in Africa that will be made up of men of integrity, boldness, and God-fearing. God bless Africa. Good evening, Mr. Liu and Apostle Ambe. I like such discussions. Apostle Ambe, I owe you one man. Now, Mr. Liu, you will bear with me that only a united Africa can plan continentally. Indeed, the major problem facing Africa does not affect the various states separately, nor can they be solved separately. Obviously, Kwame Nkrumah once said Africa must unite or perish. Without genuine African unity, our continent will remain at the mercy of imperialist domination and exploitation. Below are some few simple yet profound reasons why Africa must unite under a socialist, stop calling please, economic system. Africa's wealth. Africa is extremely wealthy. In fact, it is the wealthiest landmass on the face of Earth. Pooling investment resources to invest in large-scale production, optimal market size. Only United Africa, with its more than 1 billion people, can provide that requisite market size to stimulate large-scale production. There are so many that I cannot name all. Okay. Good evening to you all, Mr. Liu. I am Tako Livinus in Limbe. I'm really enjoying the program. Okay. But Apostle Ambe, I want to take some messages so that you react to them. The Western world are just seeing us as mad people. What they do is they print empty dollars. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is a critical topic. How can you explain that the fact that 30% of military generals in Africa country are Chinese? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. After Second World War, countries like China, Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Japan benefited from it. And after 20 years, these countries are aid-free. This is the question. Many persons think that we are going to negotiate for aid, assistance. Why should we be doing that in 2023?
Like I said, every other country has been colonized. I think if we start blaming colonialism, neo-colonialism, is an error of monumental proportion. Okay. Because India was colonized. India never lost its culture. The national language of India still remains. English is a second language in India. Their religion has not changed. Hinduism is predominantly in India. India's culture of dressing has not changed. They have maintained their culture. As a matter of fact, you find sanity and morality in most Indian films than many of the films that are acted in Christian nations. You don't see pork kissing in Indian films. You don't see sex in Indian films. But if you watch films organized in Nigerian films and other countries, you will see people are making love there carelessly. What happened that the British came to India? They didn't steal their culture. They didn't steal their language. They didn't steal their modus operandi. They didn't steal their currency. But they came to Africa. They introduced their currency, introduced their culture, introduced their language to the extent that if you don't speak good in Africa, you are not intelligent. As a matter of fact, we ascertain your intelligence in Africa based on your fluency and your accuracy in English language. That is an error of high proportion. I have seen very intelligent engineers in the mechanic garage who are far more intelligent than those who speak engineering language in English. So we now ascertain based on somebody's expression what is happening that these people did not lose their culture. Why is it that they did not lose their currency, did not lose their language, did not lose their integrity? This is simply because it's simple as ABC. I will put it in a way that almost everyone watching this program will understand the reason why the African countries have lost almost everything and then probably are trying to blame everyone. It's greed. It's centered on greed. If you give a Singaporean $100 million and you cut that to see $500 million, if you give an African $100 million, because greed is the center of this. You will hear that 55 African countries went to China and borrowed a loan of $60 billion. They don't even see a single trick because it went to the account of individuals. How do you explain that India, that has a population of 1.57 billion, 1.7 billion, forest on earth from Nigeria. But Nigeria is about 5 times India's population. India is 1.4, Nigeria is 100 million people. Now, how do you explain that a nation that has more people has lesser people than a nation that has lesser people and have more poor people? This is because when money enters into the hands of individuals, it is not evenly distributed. What has killed Africa is that a lot of resources, infrastructure, roads, hospitals are in people's bank accounts in Switzerland. A lot of schools, healthcare, and all infrastructural developments are in the pocket of individuals buried in houses. There are underground banks and bunkers dug by individuals, planted money there, and they die, and that money rotting away beneath the earth. This is because that same 100 million was given to Singapore many years ago. Singapore invested that money positively. So the challenge is not in the money, the challenge is in the management. And that's the reason why the first thing that God gave man was a garden to manage. You cannot succeed if you are not a good manager. Even if we borrow all the money in the International Monetary Fund, as soon as it enters the hand of these greedy African leaders, it will never produce a desired result. So this is the reason why Malaysia is growing. Malaysia came to Nigeria many years ago and collected palm nut seeds. Seeds from Nigeria. Collected those seeds and traveled to Malaysia. As I talk to you right now, Malaysia does not have any natural resources. Their only resource is palm oil. And Malaysia is a middle-income economy that is almost hitting the first world. Indonesia has nothing. Those are countries in Asia. So what is wrong with Africa? Leadership. Greed is the issue. Individuals who believe by satisfying the Europeans make them more better than their people. How do you explain that somebody will find it comfortable dressing like a European than dressing like an African? He wants to speak. Somebody lives here and travels to Egypt and he starts speaking his nostrils. Hello, man. How are you? How are you? I am telling you, Indians stay in America and Canada for many years. Their tongue don't change. Their culture does not change. Their dressing doesn't change. But let a Cameroonian live here and just land in Toronto for 24 hours. The trouser will be sacked at the bottom of the buttocks with all kinds of chains on his neck with tattoos everywhere, and then he speaks with his notice. I'm gonna let you understand. We are easily assimilated. And that's the reason why we have lost our identity. If you lost your culture, lost your identity, you've lost your future. We lost our identity and our future many years ago. And that's the reason why we are trying to act to be something that we are not.
Okay, greetings to you in the studio. To our guests, what is your opinion regarding AIDS in Africa? What solution can you propose as a resolution to corruption and climate change in Africa? Thanks. This is Rene writing from Kumba.
What can we provide as solution?
Yes, AIDS to Africa.
Regarding AIDS to Africa, the issue is we have a challenge in Africa. Even our thieves are not patriotic. If the thieves were patriotic, it would have been better. How does now somebody steals hundreds of millions of dollars and goes and puts in the Swiss bank? If I told you were stealing and investing in Mombasa, investing in Nairobi, investing in Yaoundé, investing in Douala, at least that theft would have been a benefit to the society. You would have invested generating income. So our thieves are not even patriotic. So when he says, what do we do with the AIDS? Listen, Mr. Leo, from scriptural point of view, there was no smile over thieves. Thieves were given discipline and very draconian measures were put in place that terminated theft.
Like what is happening in Japan and in China.
A man in Cambodia, Minister of Works, set up a plan to build 450 houses. The time came when he had not finished building, he committed suicide. Because he was ashamed not to have met his goal. Yeah. A man, Minister of Works in Cambodia, committed suicide because he didn't meet up his goal. Out of 450 buildings, he built 300 and he committed suicide. In Japan, if you carry out any corruption, you are eliminated. As a matter of fact, every time you are voted as a Japanese prime minister, you are taken to the shrine of Shinto to go and swear an oath that if you violate the engagement of the nation, you die. That's why every time you want a Japanese prime minister brought to power, they take him to the shrine. The measures put in place against thievery in this country and Africa are very, very relaxed in such a way that they cannot deal. I was told, I watched this man, Lazarus Chakwera, discipline a minister who stole $600 that was designed for vaccine for patients in Malawi during the COVID-19 period. How do you explain that? If a minister is being sentenced to prison for $600, we have country ministers see 340 billion and they are walking in the streets. No measures are taken to deal with those who mismanage it. If that comes to Africa, Africa does not lack aid. As a matter of fact, the more painful part of this story is that we always go to collect aid. For how long shall we keep on collecting aid?
Yeah, but what is the justification for this aid? If we have taken aid assistance, financial assistance for 30 years and the country keeps sinking, what is the motivation to take more loans?
Do you know that if Indonesia comes now with another loan strategy, Africans will shift there? They are looking for the most suitable ground to borrow. When IMF came, they began borrowing IMF. Chinese came now and make the loan lighter. That they are shifting towards China. Let any other power broker come again in the, let's say, in Malaysia. They say now we now give loans of 2%. Africans will still go there. That borrowing mentality is a mentality that it will never take you out of captivity. That's why you hear preachers in Nigeria will tell you, I can never borrow. Because they have understood. We have seen pastors gather 2-3 persons from 1980 by the year 2022, they have the city. Because they learn the principle of never borrowing. You can't borrow consistently and succeed. You cannot. You should be able to say, I can never borrow. And you are seeing the proofs. And the way say we cannot borrow. You are seeing the proofs. Those are men who began with 2 or 3 are gathered. Today is the day, amen. Now they have cities of their own because they engage the principle of non-borrowing. What is killing Africa is that we borrow and we don't invest. People borrow and they steal the money. That's why you always be a beggar. You always be in the point at the position of needing aid.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Lu. Tell Apostle Ambe that if I become the president of this country, the first thing I would do is to change the national language of this country to Pidgin. That is the only universal African language. Greetings again from Songwa Star Cooperative Credit Union. Good evening, Mr. Liu. What is really difficult for Africa to become united and have a common currency? Atango, writing from Bankomo. This one says, Mr. Liu, until Africa can come together and purge the Europeans from the soil, they will never unite. Africa must come to form statehoods and or sister countries that recognize that they are connected, even if this means foregoing a continental language. After the expulsion of all foreign entities, it must remain free of outside influence for at least 50 years or a generation of people to rebuild and reshape its identity. Greetings to you in the studio, to our guest. Okay. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu. I'm Nelly Clarissa from Kumba. Please, how can you explain the fact that Africa up to date is still being controlled by these European countries? Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa, we are looking at Africa and the rest of the world, but are we also, when you look at United States requesting for the presence of Africans, you have France
China,
that is constantly doing that,
Russia.
China. Are we in another phase of, is it the scramble for Africa?
Yeah, there's a second move of scramble in Africa. And it is very visible because this time around it's not just the European powers. No, the Asians have come in. The Qataris are here, the Turks are here.
Who themselves were colonized?
Yes. They initially were colonized. This time around they're coming as colonizers. Africa is the only colonized person that has remained colonized. Those who were once colonized are coming as colonizers. The Qataris are here, the Lebanese are here, the Malaysians are here, the Indonesians are here, the Turks are here, the British are here, the Americans are here, the French are here. As a matter of fact, China and Russia are also in a very serious battle now with the mentality of delivering the African countries from the hands of their former colonial master. I wonder the kind of deliverance, because the man who wants to deliver you also is a captor. He's a captor. He's coming to make you a captive. So you don't tell me that the Wagner security company is right now in Central African Republic to defend Ashforsten and Tuadera for nothing. Central Africa has so much gold and diamond, and they cannot just be there to defend. Somebody interviewed Prigoni, the director of Wagner security in Russia, and they asked him how African countries are in need of your forces and they don't have the money to pay. What do you decide? Do it for free. And every African country will excitedly say, oh, these are good people. No, they are not. They are not. I've told you that those guys are coming here for business. And a businessman does not have free lunch. A businessman is self-centered on what they want to achieve. As a matter of fact, if I carry my cargo to the market as a Christian, I don't know who is going to buy. The person that wants to buy is my customer. Whether you're a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Hindu, or a witch, my religion has nothing to do with my business. So when they come to Africa, you have nothing to do when it comes to negotiating what they want to sell. If a dictator is their best customer, they will sell the arms and keep him in power for as long as he can stay there, as long as he buys their product. If a liberation movement leader buys their product, they will empower him to take over power. So they are not here to like fight against dictators to bring in new people. No, any dictator that can buy their product is their best customer. If you were to stay for 40 years and you're a good dictator, they will make you to stay for 80 years because you are buying their product. So a man who is selling does not have religious barrier as well as anything in terms of to business to customers. So Russia is not coming and saying, Obiangema has stayed in power for so many years. I think it is time for us to give arms to some young man to kick him out of power. No, as long as Obiangema is a good customer to Russia, Obiangema can stay there for the next 50 years. What they are coming here to do is to make their products sell.
The product sell. This is what Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa is saying. But we have instances like the African Union that should be also aware of this. Why is African Union not actually prioritizing African states doing business amongst themselves? Can African banks not raise the amounts that we are borrowing from out there?
I'm sure I said something of that sort. The theme of this year's African Union Day is accelerating the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That's their theme. I have a worry. They have powerful themes that are not changing anything. Last time they said silencing the guns in Africa. We have had more guns. As a matter of fact, from the time they make that statement, that was when the spark came out in Tigray, because somebody from the Oromo clan came to power when Tigrayans have ruled Ethiopia for almost 30 years. Abe Ahmed came from the Oromo clan. Abe Ahmed was a 23-year-old military soldier that joined the army. So he fought the war between Eritrea and Ethiopia for 20 years. He said he had been at the war front and saw how people died. And by some stroke of luck, he became prime minister. And then he said he's going to put an end to that nonsense because why? He has had first-hand knowledge with what happened in the field. He was the one that flew now to Eritrea to meet Isaiah Afwerki and negotiated for peace to be settled between the two of them. When he did that, the Tigrayans found it very unwanting and started confronting Abiy Ahmed. That was what sparked off the crisis. African Union was right there watching with their team, silencing the guns, and the guns were smoking very high. Guns are smoking in Mali because that was when 2 coups d'etats were carried out by Assimi Goïta after kicking out Abubakar Keïta, brought in Bando, who was the former Minister of Defense, and said, take power and rule us. Bando began drifting towards France. He carried another coup d'etat, conquered him out, and then took power. Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso kicked out Sonko in Guinea-Bissau and Mamadou Doumbouya in Guinea-Conakry are all product of gun smoking when AU says in their theme, silencing the guns. Now it's accelerating the continental free trade area. How far would they trade? When you will leave here to go to Gabon, they will tell you to pay visa, but Gabon is under CEMAC. I think the passport of Cameroon should make me walk into Gabon free. Central African Republic is free. But if you land at the Lumba International Airport, you are bound to put your passport and a visa is stamped. Receiving a visa at the entrance of the country does not make free entry. And that's the reason why Uhuru Kenyatta, before getting out of power, said the Tanzanians should use their ID cards and Ugandans to enter into Kenya. Which means the whole East African Community, EAC, should operate with ID cards, not passport. Because passport is an international document, not a local document. I don't need a passport to go to a local environment. If Gabon happens to be under CEMAC, then Gabon is a local environment. I don't need a passport to go there. I need an ID card. And they should have a central system where all ID cards are registered within these 5 Central African countries. So by the time I shoot in Gabon, I'm a Gabonese. You shoot in Cameroon, you're a Cameroonian. But now how can we trade Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Mr. Leo? Free trade area, free trade. It means I can carry puff for here from Cameroon and walk with feet and enter Bitam and sell. But how can you enter Bitam when there is a border police that will block you and ask for your documents? That's not free trade area. Free trade means I can carry kulu from here and enter into Chad and sell without any disturbance at the border. Free trade means I can walk from here to Bangui with shoes in my hand and sell. But when you reach at the border of Bangui, they will ask you for a passport. That is not Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It's Africa Continental Barrier Area.
Yep, but we are going to take loan from these nations, and Africa has this potential. You are enumerating, you want the barriers to be broken down. What is holding the barriers from coming down across the continent of Africa?
We are good in making laws we do not keep. That's the problem. If I thought we were respecting the laws stated, because a lot of things have been established in the area, they are not practiced.
Especially in the CEMAC zone,
yes,
for example.
They are not practiced. You see, like you were talking about loans, we have several banks in Africa. Several banks. Only in Nigeria, the individuals who have banks that can raise the sum of $200 million or $200 billion. But you see, we must go and take it in France. I don't know if that money in Europe is sweeter than the one that is worked here. Dangote has established a refinery that is the 7th largest in the world and the biggest in Africa. And that thing can be able to provide jobs for hundreds of thousands of Nigerians as an individual. Now, how many of those Dangote and Africa cannot put on $100 billion to 55 African states? That is the problem. There are individuals in this nation, in this continent, that can put their money together, because most of the loans that Chinese give is not just the Chinese government. It's Chinese individuals who have done business and opened banks in China. The Chinese government now take money from them and loan to African countries. Individuals in nations are loaning to nations. Then we are here in Africa, we cannot get money. There is a group of banks called the Artisanal Fabric of Banks in Morocco. That's another bank that's a heavy machinery when it comes to finances. But what are we doing with those banks? Those banks are just formalities. We have, oh, this one has money, this one has money, this one has money. Yet the money is not seen. And we have a serious challenge is that when these monies are collected, that's what my challenge is. if this money were properly invested,
Mm-hmm.
you won't worry again now. Ask any businessman that collects money in the bank, the first thing he has to do is to invest that money and be able to generate the income and give back to the bank while they use the profit now to continue their investment. But that's not the case. The last time Ambe borrowed money here, we did not even know where the money came from. They even sent an equipe to come and carry enquete. They carried out the enquete, they did not get any headway. They borrowed another money again.
Good evening to you there in the studio. Good evening, Papa Pastor Ambe. I am amazed for your intervention. A really long life to you. You are wonderful bibliothèque. You have the solutions to all the problems. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Chamboli Yannick from Yaoundé. I want to say kudos to Apostle Ambe for a wonderful mastery of what is killing Africa. To add a little, one of the reasons we keep being dependent on and underdeveloped is because we don't think about tomorrow. All we think of is to eat today and forget tomorrow. Apostle Ambe is very intelligent. If he is the president of this country, we will have a little heaven down here. G. Richards, I hail you, Prophet Ambe. Mr. Lu, tell Prophet Ambe to form a party and contest for presidential elections. Cameroonians will stand behind him. Reason being that he knows a lot of, and he speaks sense always. As a president, he can impact a nation. Sone Stone, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Thanks. If I be a president in this country, I will put Apostle Ambe special advisor to me. Thanks. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I appreciate the work on board. Looking at what is going on in Cameroon, you will see that since the prices of basic commodities increased, the government is doing nothing to curb down these prices. Okay. Thank you very much for answering my question. Okay, good evening. It's D. Musa from Yaoundé. The summit is held to convince Africans they are our friends while they are our foes. Africans should realize these guys have nothing to offer us. If Africa can reinforce trade between African countries, it will be step before talking about the currency. One area code, one army, etc. These summits are just keep them trapped in the mental cells, nothing more. Now, when France convenes African heads of states or Europe, is it to tell them what to do? Are these guys necessarily more intelligent than us? Why do they call us to tell us how to fix what we are already doing in Africa? Let's talk about climate. Who is destroying the climate more than who? And who should give lessons on how to conserve nature and climate?
Mr. Liu, first and foremost, when we are talking about climate, Africa has a unique climate. We're in the tropics. There are a lot of things we have in Africa that are not found in Europe and America. So it amazes me to find that people don't understand our climatic condition, want to educate us on climate change. That's why I said we have to open Africa what? Health Organization.
Yes.
Because the kind of diseases we have here.
You talked about African disease control, something like
yes,
CDC.
yes. We should have it. Because the truth is, Mr. Leo, the kind of disease we have in Africa, they are not in Europe. A friend of mine flew to America and had malaria. They had to package leaves here to send through DHL. Because those guys don't have malaria. So they don't even know the cure to malaria. That's the reason why most of them take vaccines. A friend of mine who came from Canada said, there is a vaccine you take, but you must have a social security number in Canada. You can stay for 10 years without having typhoid. So a man who takes a vaccine against typhoid is not doing any research on typhoid. We're the ones who have typhoid here consistently because of the climate condition. Now, how do you explain, Mr. Liu, that when you were a young boy in womb, you walked with bare feet? You went to the streams of the water beside the village where there was no hygiene. You drank. There was no typhoid. You now come to Douala in the city where the water is being purified with chlorine. Every single moment you drink that same water, you have typhoid. You walk in the village with bare body, and if a mosquito bites your body, you did not have malaria. You come to Douala, you are under a tent, and you still have malaria. I don't know who deceive Africans that the fight against malaria is tent. And doctors with PhD stand on television and say, one of the ways to fight against malaria is sleep. You sit in your parlor, there's no tent. By the time you leave the parlor to go to the room, mosquito has already beaten you in the parlor. So how does the tent in your room secure you from the mosquito bite that you sit in front of your house? How does a tent in your room secure from the mosquito bite that you walk in the street? And then you hear millions and millions of dollars are invested in buying tents. Tents that remains in the room. Inside the room, Mr. Liu, tent. So outside, there is no tent. Mosquito does not stay outside. Mosquito will leave you when your body is bare outside and come and follow you where he will not be able to reach you. It will not be able to reach you under your tent. That's how bad the situation is. So you want to put one-on-one, there is a very serious problem. That's why you see Ramaphosa said, you people value the interest of your pharmaceutical companies to the lives of Africans because you did not give us the vaccines for COVID-19 and you refuse us from producing that vaccine. Mr. Liu, if this is not greed and wickedness, I have the capacity to produce a vaccine that will help my people. You did not just provide for me, you stopped me.
Yeah, but when we make these beautiful speeches that you stopped, are we not the ones who accepted them from stopping us? Are we not Africans? Don't we have the African Union? Are we not sovereign? Are we not independent? Are we not mature enough to know what is good for us? Why do we sit and wait for persons to validate what we want and have to do?
That's when now you come back to where I tell you there's no sovereignty. The purported sovereignty is a display, it's a smoke screen display.
Yeah, because when you declare publicly that you stop us
from producing vaccines, then when we stop us, who stopped the native doctors here who have produced drugs against epilepsy, who have produced leaves against malaria and typhoid?
That reconnects bones. Broken bones, yeah.
Who stopped them? Then you go to vaccine, the World Trade Organization headed by an African. You see, actually these guys just look figureheads and put to convince Africans that they are part of the international play, but they are not. The head of WTO is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who happens to be the chairperson of the WTO, World Trade Organization. When African presidents went there to demand for license to produce their own vaccine, it was in that same organization where their own person is the head, were stopped. Just like you will hear tomorrow they say Kofi Annan is the Secretary General of the United Nations for formality. You will hear that the head of the WHO is an Ethiopian for formality. They take this head and put who have no power. I think at the moment of the COVID-19, Africa had the best advantage to have had an opportunity to under the WTO because they had the head as an African. But unfortunately, they were resisted. Now, why would they produce Africans' vaccine in Europe? Diseases operate according to tropics and based on the climatic condition. What operates as sickness in China is not what operates here. That's why the Chinese approach to health is different. Acupuncture is part of Chinese treatment. We don't have it here because we don't have sicknesses that are in line with that kind. How do you explain that somebody who does not understand the African condition, the climatic condition, the different diseases here, want to treat sicknesses in Africa? We even came out with locally produced medicines against COVID-19. They were stopped. The organ that came from Madagascar was heavily fought. It tells you there is no sovereignty. Can they ever stop Qatar, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, or any of those countries in the Middle East from doing theirs?
Yeah, but
the most decent welcome, Mr. Liu, so far, in terms of morality and sanity, took place in an Arab nation. You couldn't enter into a hotel in Qatar with a woman without a marriage certificate. You didn't wear skinny dresses that expose your breasts. Alcohol was not sold anywhere in Qatar. Try it in Cameroon. Qatar has banned homosexuality, no sanction. Yoweri Museveni signed a bill recently in the parliament that enacted the fight against LGBT, and they have given them sanctions not to enter America.
But yes, that was going to take me to one of the last questions I have for you. Is that to find out where the difference is, where we have nations that were also colonized like Brazil, we have other Latin American nations, we have Asian nations that are actually acting like truly independent nations. What is the difference? We don't see these nations invited as a continent by single nations like China and Russia. They treat as
equals.
As equals, yes.
Yes, growth.
Where is the difference?
Growth.
Okay.
Growth. The one word is growth.
Growth is as in monetary terms or mindset?
In terms of mind.
Okay.
Mindset. You see, when you grow mentally, people don't manipulate you anymore. It's as simple as ABC. You are only a subject to the level of the ignorance. The day Africans will understand who they are, all this nonsense will stop. You see a country like Brazil does aircraft assembling. It doesn't produce aircraft. But you see, Brazil has grown beyond them. Even little countries in South America like Venezuela, they are taking their place. We have not grown. I want to accept what Frederick Leclerc said in 1986 during the apartheid. Give African guns, they will kill each other. Give money, they will steal it. It is not a matter of refusing to grow. How influential is Singapore? Do you know that Singapore has just a seaport? What gives Singapore money is a seaport. We have the best seas here that can produce even bigger seaport than Singapore. As a matter of fact, there are countries that are growing without having 1/10 of our resources. It has to do with growth. If the money that we're entering this nation were properly used, they would have been sizing us. You see Rwanda in some years to come. Rwanda will not be treated as a no-nonsense nation, as a little nation. Rwanda will be treated because it has come of age. Even in natural life, Mr. Leo, there are people, if they don't match up with your status, you cannot associate with them. That's the truth. The moment you start growing,
so Africa has refused.
They have refused to grow voluntarily, refused because of greed, self-centeredness, and egocentric attitude.
No.
Didn't you see the video of the Cameroonian girl who was taking a video with the Netherlands Prime Minister, who was going to work on food? He was on feet, going to church, going to work.
But he remains the Prime Minister?
He's the Prime Minister. The Irish Prime Minister went to work with bicycle. Look at the convoy of an African president. Not the president. Divisional officer. That one enough is able to tar 10 kilometers road. Why all this display of grandeur when you know that the road that is even escorting you is gallop? A governor is running with an escort of almost about 200 million when the road is running on, has gallop everywhere. Are we not sick? Do you know why Chinese people don't value us? I'll explain to you. I have a friend who lives in China. He said they don't consider Africans with any respect because Africans don't grow. I'm telling you, in life, in the natural life, moment you don't grow to a certain level, you cannot interact with certain persons financially. Africa has not grown to match up with those guys. Go to Europe, you'll see the difference now. When we grow, they will respect us. People respect you when you grow. Yeah, when you were a child, your mother used to slap you. When you grew to be a man, she knew that this man has grown to be a man. Okay. When Africa will grow, we will earn respect. Respect is earned, it's not demanded.
Apostle Ambe, let's assume that, okay, in the past it was just France or Europe that was considered as the, in quote, a slave master or our masters. We were going there. And now they, thoughts of moving to the east, considered better, Russia, China, and then comparatively to the United States of America, who is better? Are we just gambling?
Mr.
Navigating in the dark.
The question I should be asking is, why should we always be moving towards people? Why can't they move towards us? There's a law of followership and a law of attraction.
Okay.
You can't attract what you don't look like. Because they look at the environment, there's an environment. Oh, Singapore is still in America. In terms of neatness, you cannot attract. This is a we change level. That's the truth. You will realize, Mr. Leo, that anyone that comes around you, that is that mentality we have. When our ministers fly go to Europe, you know that they are above us. They accept it in their heart. Somebody said the World Bank loan managers, when they go out to look for loans, countries that will take loans, they say they are best place in Africa. They face difficulties in Europe, they face difficulties in Asia, Middle East, because they don't find nations that are going for loans. When you come to Africa, Africans are going there as beggars, because the interest of the loan is not actually going to build a nation. It's to put it in somebody's pocket. There are poor who are rich in this nation based on foreign loans. That's how bad it is.
Okay, very pathetic situation. We're going to be taking a short break to come back and discuss on something different, slightly different from what we are discussing. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to Apostle Ambe in the studio. Please, I had requested, and I will request that please you beg Apostle Ambe to organize a conference or a training program to train other apostles in Cameroon and Nigeria. Please, if the multitudes that sit in these churches are given enlightened truth the way Apostle Ambe does, believe me, there will be a lot of changes. Please read my message, Mr. Leo. Please help me ask Apostle Ambe how he manages to know so much. I'm a student and I think his answer might help me in my studies. How does he manage to know so many things and recall them so easily? He just knows so much. Richardson is writing from Boya. Apostle Ambe?
Studies. That's the first thing you have to do. Studies. You must develop the appetite for reading. You don't read because you want to write exam. You read because you want to know. What has killed so many Africans because they read because they want to write an exam. They read because there's an exam put in front of them. I don't read to write exams. I read to know. And because I read to know, much of my time is invested in studying. That's the best thing that can ever happen to you. So we have been trained with the examination mentality. Master, I speak, exam they come, oh, GC they come. That period you study. Once GC passes, you drop. Then A level is coming again. Ooh, you study. And then you have your CAs in the university. Ooh, you study. And that's maybe as soon as you obtain a degree, ooh, from the cap on your head, that part of your head, you do no, I don't do that. I study widely. I read books of the leaders in the world, so I that control, and that's the reason why it's easier. Because I wonder that the don't struggle. If you don't have any content in your content, you want to draw it, not to come out. So when you are empty, you have nothing to offer outside.
Okay, so he has told you who is watching the issue is a study. He studies a lot. So if you want to be like him, you just have to read them. I'm sure Roland Quayman talked about that last week on this same program where he said that he reads, that he visited above, I don't know, how many more than 100 countries on this planet, and that wherever he went to, the gift when he asked for anything, the only gift he wanted from each nation was a book. A book about somebody who impacted the nation.
Yeah.
And that is what has helped him to get to the level where he is. So you are just confirming what he said. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and all in the studio. I want to ask what happened to presidential Gaddafi. It's G. Okay, what happened to President Gaddafi? Good evening, Mr. Liu. Still from Yaoundé, I have the resources to create a political party and put Apostle as a presidential candidate come 2025. Apostle, so many persons are requesting that you form a political party.
Give him my number if he has to open the party. Give him my number.
No, he should write me after the program or call me. Hello, good evening to everyone there. Please ask Apostle that I will be in need of his number. Please, Sancho Genedo is writing from Bambalang. those who need Apostle Ambe's number should write to me either tomorrow morning or after the program so that we can exchange. But let me take one or two messages and then we move on to something else tonight. Good evening in the house. Thanks my media prime for this program, and special thanks to you guys in the studio. This program is a blessing to us. Our grace. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Okay, I have seen the spirit of young leader in this country, Professor Ambe. If I could have a chance to greet him. Tashi Mbuli, writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Great Pastor Ambe for me. I'm CY in Bafut. Good evening. Moderator Kum Leonard, I am watching your darling program live. Your panelist, Apostle Ambe, is the most intelligent and versatile of panelists I have followed. His eloquence is admirable. We need his type to lead us out of the mess. Bravo to you, Kum Leonard. From Findo Nicholas, writing from Bomenda. Good evening, all in the panel. African leaders spoke well, but we can't be pleased as equals because we are not even treated as equals in our separate nations. For Africans, our mentality needs to change. Now, when we speak with eloquence and boldness, the way we saw our leaders, and then we are applauded, but back home, nothing is felt. Our borders are tight. The population is not feeling the impact of this great leadership as expressed by the words. Where are things not working?
There's a difference between wisdom and knowledge.
Okay.
African leaders are knowledgeable, but they are not wise. Okay. A wise man is not known by his words. A wise man is known by his deeds. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why when the king of Sheba came to Solomon, he said, my eyes have seen beyond what I was told. So it is your result on ground that proves if you are wise. A lot of people acquire information. That is knowledge. But you see, the application of information is what we call wisdom. Now, what is lacking in Africa is not knowledge. We have very excellent orators, sound and very good speakers. I mean, they can explain the world all over. But you see, engaging what you discuss is the challenge. That is the challenge. Many people want to be like Apostle Ambe, but many people don't want to do what Apostle Ambe does. If I tell you for the past 2 months I've not slept in my house, you won't believe. And I'm a married man. I sit in the office. I'm reading a book now by Jacques Chirac in politics. He doesn't resemble church. He doesn't resemble Cameroon history. He doesn't resemble... I'm trying to look at the inspiration that Jacques Chirac came from a mayor in Paris to become president of France. That gives me another scope. So when I come tomorrow, I begin to feel like, oh, probably I study probably administration, political science. That is far-fetched. It's far-fetched.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu, Apostle Ambe. You are simply a genius in the making. Please just keep up, or you have been blessed. I'm Henry, writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Henry. Good evening. I'm Ashu Marion from Limbe. Please, I will need Apostle Ambe's number. Okay, I will send you Apostle Ambe's number, but I've said you guys should ask for it after the program. I'll share his number with those who want it. Please, Desmond, I need somebody out here. Please, we are taking a short break to continue after. Welcome back. You're watching Prime on My Media Prime. This time around, we're going to be talking about the Word of God. We're going to be talking about the Spirit of God that is going to be taking a strong hold on on Cameroon, the city of Douala, on Saturday precisely, and lots and lots of things are going to be happening. We have just been joined in the studio by Reverend Jude Ajanakem, who is in the studio with us for the very first time on Prime. Good evening, Reverend. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay.
And also to see our great Apostle Ambe also here. Nice meeting you, sir.
Yes, Reverend Jude Chinake, we are here certainly to also speak boldly and with conviction, strong words as inspired by the Spirit to convict so many persons for a great program that is planned for Douala in the days ahead. What is this program, Alan?
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of our bishop, the man that controls African zone on this program, International Circle of Friends. It's called ICOF USA, and then he controls the whole Africa, but the zone in Cameroon is also our leader. So I'm on this studio tonight just to, on his behalf, to speak about the conference that will be held in Douala here, and Friends of Jesus Ministry International here in Bonaberi, Ngwele. So it's all about a conference by a non-denominational Christian association based in USA that is called ICOF.
Yes, you say you are sitting in for a bishop?
Yeah, Bishop Tembi Alfred.
Okay.
Is our international African coordinator,
Called
representative of ICOF.
conference called Friends of Jesus?
No.
His church is Friends of Jesus Ministry, but the association is International Cycle of Faith, based in the USA. Bishop Tembi Alfred is the African representative and the prelate of that same association in Cameroon. Now, under the cover of the ICOF, we're organizing an interdenominational leadership conference in his church,
in
which is
church
Friends of Jesus Ministry behind Machede Rai,
Bonaberi.
Okay, so we are talking about an interdenominational conference for leaders.
Yes.
That is so expected, that is going to be holding this weekend.
In the 30th
Friday and Saturday the
from
1st.
10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And then in the evening, from 6 o'clock, we'll be having Miracle Night. Yeah.
And
then Saturday is the last day for the program, just 2 days for the program.
We're talking about interdenominational conference.
Yeah.
That's going to be holding out here in the city of Douala. Interdenominational, it means that it is the assembling of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's all, ICOF also have much attached in unity of the body of Christ.
Yes.
With the John 17 verse 21, that Jesus prayed that the church will be one. You know, that's one of the focus for ICOF.
Is that actually Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa? Is that not the problem we are facing, where we have the church that is built on the foundation of love that means that almost everybody is supposed to come together in unison, so that we glorify God, but so many fights amongst churches, pastor against pastor. Is this the way forward for a strong church in Africa and the world?
No, Mr. Leo, that is not the way forward for a strong church. But you know, when anything concerns God, it must be fought. Okay. The fight amongst us as pastors, amongst us as denomination, is not orchestrated by God. The devil knows that the strength of the church is unity. And the devil will definitely fight the unity, because the strength of that unity is what brings down the devil. Jesus said in Matthew 16 verse 18, I will build my church. And I think I went to school. That word church there is singular. I will build my church, not churches. I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. So until the church comes under the banner of church, not churches, we cannot stop the gates of hell. And the gates of hell also will not allow that church come together. But the issue is we don't understand the concept of unity. Unity is in diversity. That, in other words, Mr. Liu is putting on suit, and I'm wearing African wear. We are coming together. We are one, but we are diversified. I'm operating in the capacity of my strength. You operate, but we are going towards the same destination. Now, the difference is that we are not willing to accept the fact that Mr. Liu should put on suit, why I put on African wear. I want to force Mr. Liu to wear my African wear. Mr. Liu wants to force me to put on his suit. Failing to understand that the blend of that unity is when these different capacities come together, and then they give a formidable force that gives the church a particular focus. So I ICOF, International Circle of Faith, based in the USA, which was a program born out of the Azusa Revival Streets by Reverend Wade, whose son is now in charge of the International Cycle of Faith across the world. It has about 400 universities they are affiliated to, and it has been out to give license, degrees, doctorate, honorary doctorate degree programs, like part of this program in leadership. People will be given honorary doctorate degree programs in theology, in missiology, in Christian leadership, in New Testament survey. Those are things that we're giving to them because ICOF is that broad.
Very broad.
Very broad. So we are now bringing the ministers of God in the city of Douala Bonaberi in the Apostle Juice Church, Friends of Jesus Ministry, behind Mashede Rai. Friday the 30th and Saturday the 1st of July 2023. In that program, it starts in the morning by 10 a.m. The series of teachings. I'll be ministering there. He'll be ministering there. Bishop Temu will be ministering there. It's a time to empower ministers and give them a consciousness that we may have differences in denomination, but we fall under the same law and the same spirit.
What is the theme for the
reign of revival?
Okay, reign of revival.
Reign of revival. And just as Apostle Ambe said, it's just to the main vision is to see what happened in Azusa Street.
Yes, you repeat itself
in all churches.
What happened at Azusa Street?
Oh, it's a very powerful something. Long time
Azusa Street revival. It's a revival program that break out in America. These days. That there was a move of the spirit, people flow from every nation in the world to come and see what is happening. It was led by a black preacher called Joseph Seymour. Now, part of the persons who were participants of that program is the one that came out with the vision of ICOF. So that the same thing that happened in Azusa Street revival should affect churches across the nations of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, when you say interdenominational, is it strictly for Pentecostals?
No.
So who are those to be there?
Every Christian.
Every Christian.
Whether from Baptist,
Baptist,
Catholic.
And you have the mind to be trained.
Yes.
Yeah, because they will be also giving license to some young preachers that are really dynamic.
To minister on international platforms.
In the international platform, that can be able also to reach the unreached. I think it's all about revival and the reign of a revival in the nation.
Reign of revival in Cameroon, when we say we want revival to reign, it means the revival is not at the level that we would have wanted, or it's still, it's still at a level.
Leo, yes. If you go to the Bible, Psalm at 125-26, talk about say revive us, O Lord.
Oh Lord, yeah.
This is like just the test of a Christian, a taste of a leader, that you need more of God's anointing.
Yeah.
You can get an anointing, but every good Christian need more to overflow and overflow and overflow, so that you don't be contented the level
where you are,
or you have the hunger for the ministry.
Now you are going to be ministering. Apostle Ambe and Bishop Tembi are going to be ministering. I'm sure others also. What will be the focus of what you will be telling the Christians and the leaders that will be gathering at Gwele out there in around Rai, behind Rai? Behind
Rai.
Yes, in Bonaberi.
We have so many topics because it's a leadership training program. I think many speakers will be handling on church planting, they will be handling on a revival, a lot of things, and it's just all about to see that Jesus will be lifted, glorified. And there are also like what Apostle Ambe is saying. Knowledge is power. Many people answer pastors or leaders and there are a lot of things in the ministry, and they need to be governed and to be trained. And these 2 days will be very powerful because the ICOF have powerful speakers, that will be equipping young ministers. And
so if you are a young minister watching this program, or you know a young minister who may be in ministry, this is an opportunity for them to build themselves up, acquire skills and knowledge. And Apostle Ambe Valentine Angwa, that could also be one of the major problem Africa is facing, where it is true the call comes from God, and then you start implanting churches, but there is need for a schooling that is sitting down to also acquire knowledge on how to carry yourself as a man of God.
If you look at Jesus' modus operandi, you will realize that a lot of activities in the ministry have been misconstrued, because he said, follow me. That's the first thing. That's the call. He said, follow me. After followership, he said, I will make. There's a making process. It is where we are missing. That making process is a building process. That making process is the maturing process. That making process is a defining process. That making process is a shaping process. That making process is defining where you belong. Because you can't be called to preach the entire Bible. You are called to preach a part of the Bible. It is in that making we make you understand where you belong and what you are supposed to do. Like Jesus looking at Peter and say, you are the rock. On this rock I will be in my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. You realize that practically speaking, Peter was a revelation on preaching the gospel as an apostle to the Jews. That was what he built. Then when God called Paul, he said, I'm sending you as an apostle to the Gentiles. So everyone has a path. But you see today, the challenge we have is that once people have a revelation in the night and it happens in the morning, they call themselves prophets. Apostles. No. There are more fruit in the apostolic ministry and prophetic ministry than just seeing a vision. As a matter of fact, anybody can see a vision, even a witch doctor. If you go to Acts chapter 16, a girl who was a diviner was able to detect that Paul was a servant of God. But it wasn't the spirit of the living God. So seeing a vision does not qualify you as a prophet or a prophetess. Now the prophetic ministry brings you more of a teacher than a seer. It was in the Old Testament that you saw prophet. John the Baptist was who? Was a prophet. Which miracle did he do? No one. What did he see in the spirit? He saw nothing. Jesus said, among all the prophets born of a woman, none can be compared to John. But he didn't call name, he didn't call phone number, he didn't call pants, he didn't call the color of your brassiere. He was a prophet of a class. But you see, we have ascertained prophets, but I want to call names and phone numbers. In native doctors'
calls you, he has ways of calling in a voice, encounter, sends people to equip.
Yes, he sends people to equip. That's why he says, when he ascended up high in Ephesians chapter 8, 4 verse 8, he said he descended also and led captivity captive. And he gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some teachers and pastors that we can all come to the matters of the faith. So there is a building process.
To say about a building process, I don't know, it was someone that was God called.
Yes.
And then God calls him, and then but he took time to grow.
It's very bad because you cannot really come to that point of understanding the call. And you hardly put in the ministry for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, closing back. But there is a training process. Also, I call for people who have Bible schools now, and they have almost 400 Bible schools and churches that affiliate with them internationally. So if people are running good Bible school but they don't have international, affiliation, ICOF do that. Once they know the curriculum and what they believe, and it's also sound, and they will also have good affiliation with ICOF.
So are you running a Bible school in Cameroon, and maybe your certification process is doubted? Now ICOF provides you with that international credibility of certifying those who undergo training in your Bible school. But you talked about Friday, Saturday, there is going to be a miracle night. What miracles are going to
when the eagles gather, it's also called the conference of the gathering of the eagles. Something great will happen. That night is exclusively for people who have been waiting on the Lord for miracle. These great men of God are coming to our, together in our ministry, and in the evening it's just power, fire. We born again and Pentecostal. It will be a moment of praying for the sick. And we'll be waiting upon the Lord, who is to rain revival on the nation. Will also rain revival for anybody that will come for the program. And expecting that the grace of God and the miracle of God will reach that person.
Okay.
That's why I target Night of Miracle.
Night of Miracles, precisely Saturday?
Friday.
Okay, Friday.
Friday from 6 o'clock to
Okay.
8 o'clock.
Okay, the Night
2
of
hours.
Miracle is Friday.
Yes.
Not Saturday.
Not Saturday.
The program ends on Saturday.
Yes, Saturday.
Okay. So if you have a sick
Yeah.
person, you have somebody who may actually be waiting on the Lord for a touch
Yeah.
in a particular area of your life.
Yeah.
This Friday is your moment. I would liken Friday to this guy who sat around the pool waiting
Yes.
For the move of the water.
move of the water.
Yeah.
So you might have been waiting for that moment. Friday is just the moment where
Steering
the
of the
angel,
water.
the angel is coming. Yes. So wherever you are, maybe your business is not going so well.
Yeah.
You have issues with your career,
Your
you have
health,
issues,
health,
yeah.
fruitfulness.
But these are
Open
issues.
doors.
These are issues that are spiritually related. So you may not be understanding. Friday is your night out here in Douala.
Friends.
Can we direct our persons how they can get to receiving that
Yes,
touch?
by Mashederai, as if you are going to Bonaberry. We are in Gwele. Mashederai runabout. You take, if you are coming from, like say from Ron Point, you take your left. And then the first street also you enter just 200 meters, you get Friends of Jesus Ministry. And now
The signboard is
the signboard is there, the flyers are there, even by runabout, the flyers are already there. You can also ask those who take Okada, you can say a church, they call it VIP church. Friends of Jesus VIP church is nearer a school called Susanna. You know, it's a popular school there.
Yes.
Before the school, yeah. And then you can also call us by 677-614992 and then get our contact immediately.
Can you give it again?
677-614992.
No, take it slowly.
677-614992.
Okay. So for those who did not get the numbers, I will share Apostle Ambe's number with you so that you can take the rendezvous to be there on Friday for the miracle night. Apostle Ambe, precisely what are you going to be talking about at that?
Yes, Mr. Leo, you see, people have attributed revival to prayers alone. And from every ramification, we have been praying in this nation as a people. But you see, there's a difference between praying and engaging principles of revival. Revival is not just a program of prayer. Prayer is the foundation for revival. The Bible says a man organized a feast and invited a man that had an oxen. The man said, those are an oxen, I cannot come. He invited somebody who was married. Those are married, I cannot come. But you went to the streets to gather the poor and you need. I know that the people of food you to eat. That once the social life changes, automatically they are poor not anymore. If you look at the marriages today in Africa, to the people who have no business, no wife, no husband, no property, to bring the man that has wife, bring marriage is difficult. To bring the man that has land, who live for an church is difficult. To bring the man that has car, who live for an church is difficult. So you realize that most of our messages are centered around people who are looking for either food, shelter, or clothing. So what does it mean to revive? Is when the entire community is affected. Until our gospel go up the social ladder to start attracting men who are in need of things that they don't have, is going to change. If our gospel goes to a place where everyone has a wife, has a car, has money, who are we going to attract to church? That's the question. Who are we going to attract to church? Because most of the people there are looking for marriage, for visa, for food, for shelter. So our churches have been...
It means that once almost everybody gets
Something.
the living standards of almost everybody in Cameroon gets better, they
won't go to church anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do we do that will attract the men? Because as a matter of fact, they won't come if we are not offering what they don't have.
Of the
If we are offering what they have, if the church is offering what they have, they won't come. The church can only give them what they don't have. So what do you give to a man that has a car, has a good house, has children, has a wife? What do you offer him? That is what called revival. When the church begins to break into beyond the local ladder, they enter into the social ladder. That's what I will be talking there. And I'm already giving an introduction of what I will be discussing. And let me talk about, let me also talk about the corporate anointing. The scripture says in Psalm 133, it says, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head of Aaron that runs down to the beard and to the skirt of his garment. It is like the dew of Hermon, where the Lord commands the blessings. Listen, there is a power when ministers come together. There's a corporate anointing. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 31, it says, a one shall chase away 1,000. 2 shall put 10,000 to flight. Which means as we are coming, Apostle Jude is coming with the grace. I'm coming with the grace. Bishop Temi is coming with the grace. Dr. Ambe is coming with the grace. Dr. Tony is coming with the grace. As a matter of fact, it's going to be explosive. Powerful. Don't miss that program.
Amen.
I'm going to be there. Dr. Apostle Jude is going to be there, and it's going to be very explosive. Whatever you are looking for, these graces are coming together to give you a supernatural shift in your life and destiny.
Amen.
Yeah, no matter your social ladder in the society, whether you are a professor, a doctor, you will have something to go back home.
Something to go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever you are, whatever you call yourself and social status, Friday, Saturday is just the appointed time by God to change your story and get you to your desired position in life. And just to also make us understand, like Apostle Ambe is saying, that if you are too intelligent, you are a professor, you are a doctor without God, without morality, there's something that is missing. That is where it's coming from.
Yes, Mr. Luke. Exactly. That's I was in Boya on Saturday to help my friend Dr. Suge Freaks launch his book on dissertation, thesis, and the other stuff. I was there with the Dean of Political Laws and Political Science, Professor Tangcho, Rice Dean, Madam Patience Sone Munge, and other professors were there. What I said was that, and I quote, what caused the Roman Empire to collapse was not the absence of intellectuals. It was the absence of the men of integrity. Cameroon is growing mentally, but it's not growing morally. And when morality is not in any society, that society has no future. Out of the 12 Caesars in the Roman Empire, 9 were homosexuals. So it was the moral decadence of the Roman Empire that caused it to collapse. It was not the absence of intellectuals. We are growing minds, but we are not growing spirits in Africa. No matter how educated you are, if you lack the fear of God, your education will amount to nothing. That is the reason why I said Daniel is a model. He was tested in everything, in literature and science, he was the best. Yet he proposed himself not to defile himself with the king's meat. When morality is blended with academics, there is a result that is inexplicable. So we are urging all of you who have read so much, who have equally read, come and add morality, integrity to your intellectualism. You will make a better Cameroon.
Wow.
Okay. That's so a reminder on the dates: Friday, Saturday.
Yes, Friday 30th and Saturday 1st.
Friday starts at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Okay, so every route should be leading to Gwele, Rai Bonaberry on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Friday there's going to be Miracle Night. Do not miss it for any reason. And we are going to be ending here. Thank you, Reverend, for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Apostle Ambe, we're glad to have had you.
Thank you, Mr. Louis. It's always a joy to be here. God bless you, Cameroonians and Africans. We're waiting for you on Friday.
On Friday.
So many persons say you should create a political party.
Somebody said he wants to create and make me president. I'm waiting for his call.
Okay, we want to thank you all who took time off to watch today's edition of Prime on My Media Prime. Thank you all for watching. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Professionnels des médias. La parole construit, la parole unit. Mais la parole peut aussi déconstruire et désunir. Barrons la voie au discours